Hello and welcome. Today's video is based on chapter 25 of my book Rise of Man. Please check it out, link in the description. Herbivore man or grass-eater man is a term used in Japan to describe men who have no interest in getting married or finding a girlfriend. The term herbivore man is also a term that is described as young men who had lost their manliness. In a 2011 poll of Japanese boys aged between 16 and 19, 36% said they were not interested in having sex. Surveys of single Japanese men conducted in 2010 found out that 61% of men in their 20s and 70% of men in their 30s considered themselves to be herbivores. According to a survey done in 2016, National Institute of Population and Social Security Research, 42% of millennial men aged from 18 to 34 years old as of 2016, which represents almost half of Japan's millennial men, are virgins. Japan has one of the world's lowest birth rates and is home to a severely aging population, with a recent survey finding that 34.6 million Japanese were aged over 65. An aging population, a shrinking workforce that threatens the economy, disastrous birth rates, many times below replacement levels, and a young generation that doesn't work much and doesn't produce kids. You can imagine the grim future that is awaiting these folks. In the mainstream media, Japan's lack of interest in sex is blamed on everything but the real issues. The popular theory is that the stagnant economy is negatively impacting marriage rates, and that Japanese manga, video games, and a general culture of fantasy over reality are the leading causes of the declining birth rates in Japan. Let's look at two overlooked variables to understand this phenomenon adequately. I argue that karoshi, which literally translates to overwork death or occupational sudden mortality, is one of the actual causes behind the declining birth rates. The major medical causes of karoshi death are heart attacks and strokes due to stress and a starvation diet. This phenomenon is also very widespread in South Korea, where it is referred to as gwarosa. In China, overworked induced death is called guo laozi. Couple this with the unprecedented levels of entitlement present in the current generations of Japanese women, and we have the perfect recipe to scare off young men of relationship permanently. To accurately get a sense of how Japanese women are spoiled, childish, immature, unreasonable, and ungrateful human beings, let's take a look at what seems to be the consensus on the internet concerning dating advice for outsiders who wish to find love in Japan. Next are a few examples that I will show you with different voices to make it a little bit more entertaining. If you are a guy earning 100k per year, you will have no problem attracting a beautiful Japanese girl, but keep in mind that she will expect you to stay on the success track. Japanese women, especially the one from Tokyo, expect you will provide a very high standard of living for them. You will be expected to purchase for her only luxury brand purses, makeup, automobiles, and clothing. All Japanese women expect to control the family finances. This often creates turmoil in the household when the man is told to hand over his paycheck for the wife to use to finance the family expenditures. American men are not accustomed to this, and when they say no to their sexy young bride, she starts to give attitude in return. They expect not to have to work. This is very common amongst all the couples I know, where the Japanese wife does not want to work and expect to be a stay-at-home housewife. Sometimes, even though I hardly touched her, my wife asks, "What are you groping me for?" and shoots me a hard look. Foreign men should be aware of the difficulties of having a Japanese wife. Japanese women expect to travel on your dime. When they get married, you now become the de facto parent who provides financially for your lifestyle, which of course includes travel. Trust me when I say this. When putting up 5 to 10k for a trip to Athens or Paris, because that's where she wants to go, it really starts with the pocketbook. Japanese women expect their husband to work long hours. If the husband or boyfriend is not putting a lot of time in his career, they look at him like he is not worthy of their time. Japanese women expect not to work or contribute financially to the household. Not all, but most of the Japanese women I have dated thought the responsibility of the husband was to provide financially for the family. If you ask your Japanese wife to get a job and contribute, she would look at you like there was something wrong with you. To summarize things, Japanese women have high expectations, cannot be bothered to lift up their small asses, to work, and they won't help their husband in his time of needs. If you were a young man growing up in Japan, the chances are that you saw your father throwing his life away, possibly dying of karoshi, wasting all his time, money, efforts and dreams, only to burrow his sense of self under his work. And for what? For a spoiled and ungrateful wife who thought of him as nothing more than a cash dispenser. Is it really such a puzzle to understand why Japanese men are distancing themselves from toxic women and life-threatening levels of overwork? They do not want to become a man with a broken spirit, the shadow of a person, like their father was. There are not enough curses in the English language for me to accurately express what I feel when I see this craziness. When I think about all the men that sacrifice their life and enable those entitled behaviors from women, I get so exasperated. Men are the enablers, and men decide where society goes. If all men agreed to bring back a system of patriarchy, women could only comply submissively. They could try to bargain, nag, argue, but as long as men stayed firm, they would have no choice but to listen and behave. When men collectively decide on something, there is nothing that women can do to oppose it. We are not equal. Men are so much stronger than women, and the disparity doesn't only stem from physical strength. Women have never fought for their rights, nor will they ever do. They don't have it in them to stand up for what they believe in, unless of course it is by proxy with the help of men. By themselves, women cannot do much except blowing some hair in the crowd. Even if women were to join forces, picked up arms, and fought against men, they would get obliterated before being put back in their place. A gender war is not in the realm of possibilities. It isn't even a joke. Anyway, if women are out of control, demanding, critical, and lazy, it is because men let them be so, and I can only sigh at our collective foolishness. Japanese women expect so much out of a man, yet they give so little in return. There is no reciprocity, and young men learned from the mistakes of their fathers. They refuse to die of karoshi for women who cannot love them back. In the West, we see declining birth rates mainly because of women's liberation, women's entry in the workforce, and feminist movements, which is often called the gynocentric left. However, in countries such as Japan and Korea, we see declining birth rates because of overly exaggerated traditional values, which create a kind of male disposability on steroids, and we could call it the gynocentric right. In both cases, the result is the same, and men are left ostracized. In Korea, the number of marriages has hit its lowest since 1977, and according to data from the government agency Statistic of Korea, the annual marriage rate has decreased by 54 times since 1970. To fight the low birth rates, students at some Korean university are being offered courses that make it mandatory for them to date their classmates. Countries on the gynocentric right are desperate to bring back their birth rates up, but all their efforts are fruitless as birth rates continue to plummet. The gynocentric left is just as bad as its counterpart, if not worse. Feminism and socialism are a disease. It is a terminal illness that dooms successful civilization. It is the Grim Reaper that cites prosperous countries. If you support socialism, communism, universal basic income, or whatever new brand of this societal affliction that may spring up, then you are actively promoting a sinful and corrupted ideology that will eventually cause the fall of Western civilization, along with millions and millions of debt. Socialism, along with redistribution of wealth, brings a litany of problems. Let's zoom back a little and explore some unexpected consequences of socialism. Wars, famines, disease, mass murder, natural catastrophe. They have the unintended aftermath of wiping out the poor or the people from the lower class at a staggeringly higher rate than the rich and the wealthy. People with higher IQs are generally more wealthy and more successful, which also means that they have more options at their disposal to survive when a disaster strikes. In contrast, people with low IQs are generally poor. They are congregated at the bottom of the societal ladder, and they are the first to be struck by calamities. When the lower classes get exterminated by a disaster, the lower IQs of society perish in significant numbers, and the people with high IQs generally manage to survive. In conclusion, tragedies and catastrophes raise the general IQ of a population by killing off those who are at the lower end of the spectrum, leaving only the more successful and intelligent people to reproduce between themselves. This may seem savage and unfair, but it does bring the positive consequence of raising a society's general IQ. You could see this as a kind of natural selection. A population's average IQ is directly proportional to its success and prosperity, which is why IQ is an important variable on the societal scale. On the other hand, welfare programs and redistribution of wealth make sure that the bottom feeders are well taken care of. Resources from the productive people are transferred to the bottom feeders, and in the end, they get enough money to reproduce, which is an activity that they could not afford without welfare. Lower class people typically have lower IQs, and when they are literally paid to reproduce, the population's general level of intelligence starts to plummet. Socialism decreases the intelligence of people with a sort of reversed natural selection. Average IQs are intimately related to a society's relative success, and for civilization, activating a doom clock would not be that much different than witnessing the population's general IQ levels plummeting. Furthermore, welfare incentivizes the creation of single mothers. It disenfranchises fathers, destroys the family unit, ruins the life of children. It leads to crime, higher rates of drug abuse, incarceration, to a broken culture, and it even contributes to higher rates of inbreeding. Let me address these claims one by one. First, by financially supporting single mothers, the welfare state incentivizes their propagation. In some cities, single mother can get more money through welfare than they would if they forfeited their benefits and combined their income with a man who has a middle-class salary. Not only do women have the choice of becoming single mothers, but they are rewarded for it. For a woman, staying with the father of her children will sometimes mean that she will lose money, which is practically the same thing as punishing a woman for committing to a stable relationship. Today, it could be argued that entering a committed relationship is impractical, costly, and restricting. To get more votes from the female population, which are the majority of voters by the way, government officials will not hesitate to throw men and father under the bus. After all, who wouldn't vote for free and additional benefits? It is evident that women will seek a better position and more advantages, and politicians will pander to them because they want their votes. As a direct result, men are disenfranchised and thrown out of their families. Another function of the welfare state is to give a pension to old people, ensuring that they are taken care of. This too is accentuating the destruction of the family. In the past, it was critical for parents to raise their kids as best as they could. Children have always been the retirement plan of parents, and in most societies throughout history, children had to take care of their parents when they were in their golden age. For parents, raising children and making sure that they not only succeeded but thrived was a matter of survival. There are a hell lot of incentives to nurture, invest, and properly raise your children when you take into consideration that being left alone in your old age is the likely result of failure. Today, older people get their welfare checks and they do not have too many stakes in the success of their offspring. In a welfare state, parents can choose to disregard their children's future with little to no consequences. And since people often take the easy way, well, I will just politely say that result may vary. Children raised by single mothers, especially those from fatherless homes, are filling our prisons, making around 70 to 80% of rapists. They are more likely to drop out of school, to abuse illicit substance, commit suicide, be part of gang violence, become pregnant as a teen, and have less success in their life on average. Can you imagine the effect of a generation or two of children raised by single mothers? Not only the family unit will be in jeopardy, but the foundations of whole communities will slowly deteriorate and erode. The destruction of the family is an obvious and direct result of the welfare state, but to me, one of the most disgusting things that inevitably happen in a socialist regime is the increased rate of inbreeding. Welfare and single motherhood enable a peculiar phenomenon that people do not want to address even when it is becoming more and more apparent, and that is involuntary inbreeding. Women are hypergamous. They are like homing missiles, always seeking the best, most dominant men in their entourage. Normally, women would restrain themselves and look for a dependable, stable, financially secure, and committed man. But they don't need to do that anymore. The welfare state liberated women from the burden of finding a good man, and they can pursue the top alpha males that makes their sense tingle. Those dominant men are not your everyday male, and they represent a very tiny percentage of males. In the ghettos, they are the alpha thugs, the notorious and mysterious criminal. Because of welfare programs, single mothers are free to pursue their primal urges, and they will often reproduce and bear the children of these alpha thugs. There aren't a whole lot of alpha men to go around, and when mountains of women orbit around these few men, they end up bearing the children of the same select few. As you can imagine, these men do not stick around to raise their numerous kids. As such, the children of these single mothers most likely do not know who their father is, and they also do not know that they share the same father as their neighbor. These children will grow up and eventually reproduce with each other, oblivious to the fact that they are inbreeding. Any man that knows the nature of women and hypergamy will come to realize that these results are evident when women live in a generous welfare state, and that by extension, socialism is a true abomination. The gynocentric left is a dangerous and disgusting cancerous mass. And similarly to the gynocentric right, we cannot stop it from spreading. And with this I will end this video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.